Hello, hope you're doing okay. Thanks for watching. Um, I wanted to do this quick video because this is something I get asked a lot, both by my own students and also on the channel, which is how long should essays be um, for A-level RS? And I can say sort of unhelpful things like how long is a piece of string, but there is actually some guidance that I can give you to help you figure out roughly what your essays want to look like. But it's not an exact sort of process, if that makes sense. It really depends on quite a few things. So I want to talk you through some of the things that I think are in play here to help you get it right and do your best work. Okay, so there's quite a few things that you've got to consider. We're doing 3-hour exams and there's quite a lot of questions to do on each paper. So the way it breaks down is a 10-mark answer. If you're taking it out of the 3 hours, you've got 18 minutes to do that. 15-mark answer is 27 minutes. A 25-mark answer is 45 minutes. So that's just straight what you get if you divide the paper up. So that doesn't take into account anything like thinking time or planning time or anything like that. So I think the first thing I want to say is, more importantly than how much should I write, a better question would be how long should I spend? And that 18, 27, 45, that's quite a good guideline. It's very, very unlikely in the exam that you're going to get it absolutely down to the minute, but those are for guidance. The other thing about thinking about it in terms of time is, if you've only got 18 minutes to do a 10 marker, the examiners know that you haven't actually got that long. So they can only have certain expectations for what someone could reasonably do in 18 minutes. There's some really good advice which has been put out by AQA about this, and I'll link to it for you in the comments of this video. So we've got the breakdown of 18, 27, 45, depending on what kind of question it is. The other things that you've got to take into account, and these will be different for lots and lots of people. Firstly, do you have access arrangements? If you have 25% extra time, if you have rest breaks, you need to factor that in, because that will possibly affect how much you're writing, how long you're writing for. For instance, if you have extra time, are you going to use that to do more of the writing, or are you going to use it for processing and thinking and planning? That will be different for different people, and you're going to have to try and see what works best for you. Not everybody writes or types at the same speed. Some people can produce lots and lots and lots very quickly. Some people struggle to move their hand quite as fast. So that will play into it. How long are you spending planning? How long are you spending reading the question? I'd actually recommend planning more than I'd recommend not planning. What I very often see is, if people just rush to try and do the question too quickly, quite frequently they won't have read the question, or they will have misinterpreted what the question is asking for, and that leads to trouble. And then the final point here, what I mean by differences in questions, I'm going to unpack that a little bit over the next couple of slides, because I don't think all 10 markers are equal. I don't think all 25 markers are equal. With 15 markers, that's the one where it's possibly a little bit more likely to be uniform, because there's a structure for a 15 marker that will pretty much work for everything. I think so anyway. So there's a lot of things to think about that could affect how long your essays end up being, but the exam board are quite flexible about it. So they don't count, what they certainly don't do is count the words, and you shouldn't be doing that either, because that would be a waste of time in an exam situation. But what they do is they just look at it and think, is this a reasonable amount for somebody to have produced in the time that they had? And there's obviously going to be a spectrum for what counts as reasonable. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. I would say for a 10-mark answer, you want to aim, if you're aiming for the top of the mark scheme, so if you're aiming for an A or an A star, I think your answers want to be roughly 300 to 400 words. If you're going a lot over 400, you might be spending too long. If you're way under 300, you're possibly being a bit brief. But it will depend. Some people will be able to produce 500 words in 18 minutes without breaking a sweat. If that's you, great, but you've got to think about how to make this bespoke for you. Like I say, AQA, when they mark this, they're not counting your words. They are just looking at your answer and they're making a judgment based on whether you've got a reasonable amount of detail in. Have you done a reasonable amount? If you're doing a 10-mark answer and you've written 3 or 4 lines, that's a problem, because that's not really an essay. It's not that there's nothing there that they can give credit for. It's possible that they will, but there's no way that you're going to be able to get enough depth in there to hit the higher levels of the mark scheme. What you want to not do, though, is think that every 10 marker has to be the same length. So what I sometimes have people say to me is, oh, miss, you said a 10 marker should be about this long, but I've done one and it wasn't as long. What else do I need to put in? And the answer is very often nothing, because it depends on the question. What you never want to do is just waffle or pad out your answer to get it to the length that you think it should be. If you're done, then you're done. Move on. And this is what I mean about not all questions are equal. Some questions will be very, very tightly focused and will be asking for very specific things. Others will be broader. So I've got some examples here. Examine Aquinas' cosmological argument from way 3. Now, I don't know that they would phrase it exactly like that, but if that was your question, that's a pretty narrow question. That's a very, very focused question. They want Aquinas, they want the cosmological argument, they want way 3. I think as long as you're not kind of wasting words, it's totally possible to do that within 300 words. The other one, though, examine the key features of Aristotle's virtue ethics. There probably is more to say about that. So if I was writing that, it might come out at maybe 400, 410, 420 words, something like that. But the thing is, there could be 100 words difference between those two, and they could still both get full marks if they were good enough, because one of them is broader than the other, and that will just happen sometimes. Now, 15 marker, remember, you've got 27 minutes to do this. So that's a reasonable amount of time. But again, the guidance is anything between 450 to 600 words, anything within that range would certainly be enough. If you're a little bit over, if you're a little bit under, certainly not the end of the world, but you don't want to be massively under, because again, they'll look at it and they'll think, this person had 27 minutes. Have they made a good use of that 27 minutes? I think introductions to 15 markers tend not to add very much. If you can do a really, really great one that contributes to your argument, fine. But most of the ones I read just end up being restating the question, and you don't want to do that because it doesn't add anything. You won't get any marks for it. On the other hand, a conclusion to a 15 marker, very important, because that's where you show conclusively where you have ended up on the argument. And that's what this question is looking for. So I've got another example here. It's another cosmological one. Criticisms from Hume and Russell show that the cosmological argument fails. That's the argument they want you to have. So you've got 27 minutes and maybe 500, 600 words in which to do that. That's totally doable. Hopefully, if you know your stuff, you should have enough to write to have a good argument, have a conclusion, explore both sides, do a little bit of critical analysis. But what you don't want to do is start off with a whole paragraph saying what the cosmological argument is. That's not needed. Don't do it. You won't get any marks. Okay. Finally, let's have a little look at dialogues. So dialogues, as I'm sure you know, is where you just put those two skills together. AO1, which is your 10-mark skills, and AO2, which is your 15-mark skills. AO1's knowledge, AO2's evaluation. I reckon for these, and again, we're talking about people who are aiming at the top, you want 800 to 1,000 words as your guide. For some people, they get really into it and they end up doing quite a bit more than that. I would say if you're much less than 800, you're possibly a little bit lacking in detail, because 45 minutes, as I say here, it is quite a long time. And you're drawing in a dialogues question from lots of different areas of the course. It doesn't mean that you have to spend the whole of your 45 minutes writing. I would really consider doing a couple of little plans as you're practicing your dialogues. See if it works for you. The good thing about planning is it can help you to select your information so that you don't end up going off down a rabbit hole in your essay that doesn't really take you anywhere. So if this was your question, Kantian ethics and Christian ethics are very similar. Your rubric is always the same, your instructions. Critically examine and evaluate the claim with reference to the dialogue between Christianity and ethics. So what I would do if this was my question is I'd think, right, what is Kantian ethics all about? What are Christian ethics all about? And Christian ethics, remember, isn't just one thing. So you're going to have to think or maybe plan out, what could I say for Christian ethics? Maybe I'll talk about divine command theory, maybe natural moral law, maybe situation ethics, maybe just what it says in the Bible about the teachings of Jesus. And then how can I bring this into a dialogue with Kant? Now, there's a lot to say there, and I've actually done this as a model answer, so that video will be going up soon, and you can see how I do it. But 800 to 1,000 words, maybe a little bit more, that's the kind of length you want to be aiming for. So just to reiterate one more time, these are not fixed lengths, these are suggestions. This is based on guidance from AQA rather than instructions from AQA. I've interpreted that as best as I can. I don't work for AQA, but I have been impressed with some of what they've put out to help people. So please do go and check that out. Don't worry. I would say the most important thing I want you to take from this video is it's more important how you spend the time than exactly how much you write. Okay? I hope that's been really helpful. Open to suggestions for more videos. Please put them in the comments. Work hard, take it easy, and I'll see you soon.